This is Escambia County District 2 update.
Well, good evening, Mike.
Well, hello, Vernon. How are you, partner?
Doing good. This might go by real fast. Just like we just had you on here last week. So we're going to get a District 2 update for this month. What's going on?
Well, we got a lot to talk about. As you know, the legislation's in a special session right now, trying to figure out what they're going to do with property taxes. And it's created all kinds of conversation around the state with counties and sheriffs and other constitutional officers. I got a text here a little bit ago from the Florida Association of Counties basically saying that they took the reduction in the House and Senate for the schools out of the governor's proposal. I don't know if they'll accept it. I don't know how much you've read into what was out there right now, but it's basically eliminating property taxes for homesteaded properties, right? Mm-hmm. And it would go into a $250,000 reduction and go up, I think, in 2 or 3 years to up to $500,000 for homestead. The economic impact through all of the reductions that originally came out this week by the governor was about around $70 million, not just for the county, but I think the sheriff had 4.5, 3 million, 3 plus on the trust fund. I don't remember the exact amount on the school, but it was about 70 plus million that would have been taken out of the Escambia County budget, right? For multiple different factors. We didn't know what the offset is yet. You know, is it going to be an increased sales tax? Is the legislature and the governor, if they pass that, going to expect that the counties cut services or cut the budget? Which that would be a substantial cut. It'd be about when you look at what we bring in grants and all the stuff that we bring in money, that's a little less than 900 million. It's really about 10% of the money that you don't get, like in federal grants, state grants, other money that comes in that's not actually from the millage tax, but actually is part of the overall budget. So I'm guessing, I'd have to get with Stefan, it's probably 8 to 10% of our budget we'd have to cut. Then, you know, we're putting lost on the ballot this year, the local option sales tax. And that's, you know, that pays for some of the infrastructure, fire trucks, different things that we've had for a while. And the voters will vote on that this November. And that, if that doesn't pass, that would be around a $63 million additional cut that we would have to figure out what to do in the county. So the county commissioners, if these two things go through, are going to have to really roll up their sleeves and figure out how we can do this. I think that's going to take a lot of discussion with the county administrator, the budgeting director. We would more than likely have to cut some services, more than likely have to put a freeze on hiring. But if the people want that, then we have a responsibility to do what the people want. Right, Vernon?
Well, how realistic is it, Mike?
I don't know. That's a good question. It's got to get 60% on the ballot. The problem is, without knowing what the offset is, let's say when you go to Keep Florida Thriving and they talk about basically that we'd have to increase the sales tax to, 10 to 15%, I think it's 12 to 15 cents. Being a border county to Alabama, which would have a much lower sales tax, I don't see how that helps Escambia County, right? Obviously when you buy a car, there's some things they catch on when you register your car. But say you want to go buy a piece of furniture, or you want to buy a TV, or you want to buy clothes, or you want to whatever you want to buy, right? Mm-hmm. Some people may take the trip across the state line because the sales tax could be a lot less.
Really?
That's not going to help businesses in Escambia County. And I'm on I think I told you this before. I represent I'm very grateful my peers elected me to be the District 1 representative for FAC. For Santa Rosa, Okaloosa, and partial Walton and Escambia. So I sit on that board of directors, and these conversations come up, when we meet, some of the ways that we could offset this. But no, it's it's a real thing. I think we need to find out what we'll know more. We'll know tomorrow on the 3rd, because he had a 72-hour session, and we'll find out what the governor will accept or not. I would have, with the governor, in his last few months, whatever happens, maybe this will happen, go on the ballot, may or may not pass. It's got to get 60%. Let's say it does. The next governor and the legislature is going to have to be dealing with this, because they've already carved out that they're going to protect, public safety, and they're going to have things for the, smaller counties that are fiscally hurting. Well, Escambia is not in that range, but it could be pretty quick. If we lose $130 million, it could be. So I mean,
that's true.
I just don't. It's too early for me to say until I see what the offsets are. I know a lot of people don't like property taxes, but for me, well, actually, people don't like taxes in general. No one likes to pay taxes, but everyone wants a sheriff's department and a fire department and an ambulance service and a public park and stormwater drainage, and the roads repaved, and we have to have a jail and an animal shelter, and these things cost money. They cost money. We can't, the first thing, if we had to do something like this, obviously we'd cut as much as we could, and then there's certain things that we're tied to, like especially with public safety, that we would be very limited on how much we could cut there. But libraries, animal shelter, parks, all those things would be the first, in my opinion, more likely to have to be looked at very seriously.
Wow. Do you think that's a good idea, Mike? No, I don't like property taxes either, but shortfalls have to be made up from somewhere.
I gotta be honest with you. I live in Escambia County, Florida, because the property taxes is some of the fairest in the nation. We have one of the lowest property taxes in the nation. We're in the bottom third in the state of Florida. Since 2006 till today, Vernon, 2006, the millage was right around 8%. It's at 6.6%. We have not raised the millage in Escambia County for 20 years. Wow. What people get upset about on the homestead side, and some of them that don't have that 3% cap that aren't homesteaded, is, when the property appraiser comes out and says, your property value comes out, and he says, well, your house went up so much, and, I'm going to assess 2%. He can only assess up to 3% more. But here's the argument. Do you think groceries are the same price in 2006 as they are today, Vernon? Or gas? Or concrete, or asphalt, or mowing services for parks, or that people that work in the county want to have the same raise? We got to be honest about this. I mean, everything. Everyone, all they have to do is go to the grocery store and know that the price of groceries aren't the same as they were even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, as they were in 2006. So, do I think it's a good idea? I don't. Without a real offset, no. I think we need to have an open discussion on how, with the public, how they want to fund some of these services. Because the thing is, it sounds good up front, but it won't sound so good when we have to take some of these things away. And there's other things you could do, but I don't think a commissioner would be willing to do them. You could do non-ad valorem assessments like we do for fire. Because this governor's going to put some restrictions on once you could raise the millage in the bill. That's in there now. I don't know how that will flesh out. But so then you're going to have counties saying, how do I make up this? Well, you're going to have a non-ad valorem like for sheriff, like you did to make up the $4.5 million, like we do for fire or for libraries or for park services. I don't know. It is way too early for me to tell you where we're going to land on this. But I would tell you, if you're a voter, please take all the things that I shared with you into consideration. Because right now, I think Escambia County is functioning. Now, I think, I've been on record. I think the Children's Trust has a little bit, they could tighten up their belt quite a bit with the way they're spending their money. And I brought that up last meeting. But I think on the county side, and I've been doing budgets for the federal government for, 15, 20 years before. We're not wasting money like people think we are. I'm telling you, I feel pretty confident that, can we cut a little bit more, a little leaner? Yeah, but we can't cut 70 or $130 million. I mean, that's like crazy money, man. I mean, so I don't know. We'll see where we land. Whatever the voters decide, Vernon, you know what? I'm going to do what they want because that's what my job is as a public servant.
Yeah. But speaking of the Children Trust Fund, you wanted to bring it up. Explain a little bit about the motivation behind that.
Well, okay, it came into effect in 2020 and we didn't have any data, right?
Yep.
And so they have to present to the commission at the end of the year their budget. And I've had some issues. Obviously, they got rid of the first executive director, and then Miss Cannon took over, and I think she's trying. But my problem with the trust fund is everyone in the county pays into it, right? If you're a homeowner, you're paying into that. But when I look at the programs and what they cost per kid, that's a whole nother subject. I wish I would have had the budget with me tonight, but what I will tell you, it's disproportionate, in my opinion, to the people in District 2, District 1, and District 5. And the city gets a lot more services than we do in District 2. And we have a very diverse district with a lot of low-income children. And I'm not saying they don't get some services, but it's grossly disproportionate. And so, I'd like to see a little bit more equitability across the county with that program. I also don't like the cost when you're paying $1,200 to $1,300 to $1,700, even up to $3,000 to $4,000 for an after-school program for a kid. I'm not sure that's the best way to spend the money, or if we couldn't do this a little bit better and maybe get more kids. This week they end up putting $3.5 million out, and they didn't even meet their own qualifications from what the minimum is. And, I don't even know why they did that, but we'll see where it lands. But there's not an appetite on the board. There is an appetite by the people, though. I know it passed by 61% in 2020. I was a supporter of it then because I felt like our school district, and especially with what was going on around the base, and I remember one of the previous CEOs, I don't know if you remember, Captain Conselli, was really adamant about the schools around the base, and he wanted to put a school on the base. And so around that time, I was thinking, maybe this can help. It seems like something that can help and maybe improve the scores around the schools around the base and stuff. Well, as you know, we had Warrington failing for a long time. It finally got to a C. They didn't even have a program. They do now. Navy Point went from C to a D. My recollection's correct. The only school in District 2 that has actually improved was West Pensacola, went from a C to a B, and all the rest either have stayed the same at their grades. So on the metric side, I'm not sure we're getting the results we expected, that I would have liked to have expected.
Yeah.
Not saying all the programs for the Children's Trust are bad, not saying that at all. I think they do have some good programs, but I just think it needs to be tightened up a little bit. And I know there's a lot of kids in District 2 that could probably benefit from that if it was a little bit, if there was a little, I would have a different algorithm than they do now. As you know, people apply for the programs and the needs assessment, instead of if you see a school that's going in the wrong direction, all hands on deck should be to try to improve that school, right? Especially if it's math or reading or English or whatever you're seeing going in the wrong way. I mean, you should have a needs assessment that hits those schools right away so that we can improve those scores, especially when the younger elementary kids. I mean, that's the ones we really got to get, man, because that's where we can change those kids and, hopefully improve their scores all the way through middle school and high school. So, I don't want to be overcritical of them, but I have been pretty critical. I've got beat up on it, but it's my job. It's my job, Vernon. It's your money, and it's never wrong to talk about making things better when it's your money. And especially when we're talking about money with kids, I think, and some people said, why would you should just let it go? Well, I want to make it better. I want to make it better. And you don't make it better by putting your head in the sand.
That's true. Now, your proposal was to bring it up. What was your proposal to bring it up to me?
First, there wasn't Commissioner Berry's district didn't vote for it, but his concern, and I understand his concern, I'm not sure I agree with it, but he was worried that if we put it on the ballot, that potentially local option sales tax would fail. Well, it may or may not. I choose to believe a voter can tell a rotten apple from a good apple,
Yeah.
but some people will say, well, they'll vote them all out. And that I get that, or vote against all of them. I would have rather waited 2 more years, because right now there seems to be a sentiment across the state to cut all taxes. And I understand why there's a lot of talk with that in the legislature, the governor. I don't know. I hope loss passes. We need it. But so for me, I would have rather put it on the ballot. There's only 11 counties in the state of Florida that have a children's trust, Vernon.
Really?
56 don't even have it now. And, and we have a children's trust. You know what it is? The Escambia County School District. They've been training kids for a long time, and they've done a pretty good job. And we can hold them accountable. And we have a school board. And, I just feel like this, it's a forked tax. You pay your federal tax that goes to the Department of Education. Then you pay the state tax. Then you pay the local school board tax. And then you pay the ECT tax. I mean,
really?
I don't know that's the fact. And some of the programs, so average kid, if you took what comes in the federal, and I may be off a little on the numbers because I don't have my book in front of me, but if you took the federal, the state, and the local, it's a little over $12,000 a tax to educate a kid in Escambia County, right?
Right.
And then you add the Children's Trust, which is a forked tax. But the problem with the Children's Trust is, like I said, I want fairness, and I want a needs assessment to tackle the most troubled kids, to help those kids get ahead. And so that we're making the best citizens across the county to be able to compete in the job market. And I think everyone would agree that's the goal. That's what we want. So I'm just not sure we're getting that. But, it's going nowhere. Commissioner Mays, wanted to put it on as a cow. I was okay with that because he wanted to have more discussions about it, which I appreciated. But then the county administrator called me this week and said, we have Chris Dawson coming in, and can we change that to talk about the budget? And I said, that's fine, whatever the rest of the board wants to do. So I think it's not going to be on the June 17th committee of the whole, and maybe in July and August, it'll be up to the chair, Commissioner Hoffberger and West. But on the June 17th, our lobbyist for Gray Robinson's going to come over and talk about what is going to be on the ballot for what passes that legislature on the taxes.
Okay. Now, speaking of Commissioner Hoffberger and I heard something in the news today. I didn't get quite exactly what was going on with that situation. What's going on with that, Mike?
I was told that, and it was in the news journal, that her aide resigned on Friday. I really don't know the detail. I mean, there's been a little bit of pressure on the chair with some of the stuff with the library hire, the contract COMC board, which I had a problem with that, as many people know. I talked about it. I had to resign from the health authority when I became a commissioner. Stroberger had to resign as my aide when he ran. Commissioner May's brother had to resign from one of the boards. I can't remember which one. I may have been planning. He was on some board, but he had to resign. It just seemed like it was the right thing. She shouldn't have been on that board and been the aide, because not that we have that many things that come from the contract COMC board to our board, but it's all about transparency and making sure that there's no people don't want to think that there's anything that's not transparent, right? So, I went to Wes and Allison and I said, because I think all of us were getting emails about it, not just me. And I talked to him and I said, have you talked to the chair about it? And they said they had, and she didn't want to do anything about it. And they gave me some options that I didn't feel was really the right thing to do, because, we all are equals. Okay, we're all equals up there. And I didn't think what some of the suggestions were, and I'm not even going to mention them here. I didn't think it would be fair, because I wouldn't want them to have happen to me or any other commissioner. And so they said, well, you can address it at the dais, and that's what I did. And just asking her to take her off the COMC board. And then the other thing we did is I asked the staff, because we're already dealing with the HR issue with the library hire. We're going through cleaning up the HR policy, and I haven't seen what they've come back with yet. That should come up either, hopefully, I'm hoping it's going to be on the discussion June 17th. If not, I'll make sure it's on the July one for without a doubt. But that, and then I told Wes and Allison, and this was on our board discussion, we need to have some sort of guidelines for county employees and aides on what boards they should. I don't think they should be on these external boards if you're a county employee or aide, because I just think the image of it doesn't look good. But I don't think Commissioner Hoffberger did anything illegal, and she said that. And I agree. I don't believe she did anything illegal. I think it's just the optics of it.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that, everything should be the appearance of things, even though it might not be in propriety, but the appearance of it sometimes just doesn't look right. And I think
we get beat up on everything, man. And and I get it. Sometimes we deserve it and sometimes we don't. But you want to work as a team on the board. And sometimes things can get hijacked and affects the whole board, right? Yeah. And I kind of think that's what was going on a little bit there. There was seemed like, and Rick Allison had disclosed a lot of stuff where she went over to the mayor and got rid of someone on the board of governance, and it was just not looking good. And it looked, and I don't know if anything illegal was done, but I know from my standpoint, it didn't look good for me, and I didn't like it at all.
Yeah. So where we stand with it as we speak?
Well, she resigned. So, she's going to go do other things. And she technically, I don't know if she resigned from the contract COMC board, but there wouldn't be a conflict now because she's no longer a county employee, in my opinion. But I don't know if she resigned from that or not. But if she stays on that, not being an aide to a commissioner that would potentially have to vote for it, I don't have an issue with that.
Okay. All right. Now, another story that was in the news this week about homeless people being dropped off, Alabama homeless people being dropped off here in Florida. Mike, come on, let's talk about that now. How does that? I know I'm saying how is that possible?
The sheriff a little bit ago. Look, we are a caring community. We have food banks. We've got the Waterfront Rescue Mission. We have a lot of churches that help out. But I will tell you, Vernon, I deal with this issue like it seems almost every day, but 2 to 3 times a week is fair. Mm-hmm. And, to put the story in, kind of give your viewers a background, there was a deputy down at the Waterfront Mission, and an Orange Beach deputy pulled in, police officer, and dropped this guy off, drove 30 miles to drop him off in Escambia County. Of course, I don't know who the deputy was, but he calls the sheriff, and I know the sheriff's getting beat up on this like the commissioners are, and he knows it. I literally was just talking to him about it, a little bit ago. We were at a meeting together, but so he put out a blast, and I was on, and I think Steve Stroberg and Ashley, maybe Wes, he'd hit a few people, and I saw it, and I'm like, oh my gosh! So I immediately called over to Orange Beach. I called him, talked to him for a second. I said, look, I'm going to call over to Orange Beach and figure out, well, obviously there was some, I don't know his conversations with the mayor over there, but they obviously, I don't think we're going real well. And, I don't blame the sheriff. I think the sheriff was doing everything right. But I never talked to the mayor, but I called the county city administrator over there. He met with Wes Marino today. Mm-hmm. And I talked to Wes about 4:30 to 5. He said it was a good conversation. They admitted they made a mistake. They won't do it again. But honestly, Vernon, I've been told this isn't uncommon. From some of our counties to the east of us, we have more services than a lot of these counties. And, I don't want to, I can't prove this, but there was a city councilwoman that had told me that they were dropping them off, some homeless over in the Cordova Park region. Yep. Off of Langley and stuff. Really? So, yep. That's what I was told. So this was a while back. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is we need to help the people in our community, but we can't help everyone in the Southeast region. There's no way we can do that. So you got to have a community. I mean, these folks need to use some of their resources. We can't expect the taxpayers of Escambia County to foot the bill for all the counties around us. That's not fair.
Yeah.
So it's not, I think we want to be a caring community, but we got to expect our neighbors to take care of their problems as well. And I think that's, and I'll tell you, people were frustrated about it. I had a lot of calls about that, and they were very, very upset about that.
In my mind, I'm just imagining that what situation could occur that an officer would put a person in a cruiser. I mean, how did he ever explain how that come to be? I'm just nosing, curious about.
I told that Ford is his name over there, the county administrator and the sheriff, that the police shouldn't be an Uber service for anybody. I mean, what are we doing? I mean, if someone's getting into a police car, it ought to be because they did something, illegal and are going down to get booked. So I don't know what I don't think there should be a book. I'd never say never. I know they're public servants too, and I'm sure there's sometimes they need to take someone somewhere. But man, 30 miles away and give them $20, and then when they get out, they interview them and said, "I didn't want to come here."
Well, I was just, my curiosity was he just doing that as a. I know I know he probably was in uniform and was using the taxpayers' vehicle, but I was wondering, is that something sanctioned by the department, or he just tried to do a favor for somebody?
I need to get with legal and find out. I don't know if it's legal or illegal, but it's definitely wrong. Okay, it may not be illegal, but it's definitely wrong to do that. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows it's wrong to take your problem and force it on someone else. Okay, take care of your problem. I'm not against homeless. I know that some of them have a lot of stuff going on, but I mean, I just can't believe that they think that Escambia County should take care of all this independently. We can't. We can't do it. And, when I first ran, I don't know if you remember this, Vernon. Remember when we had the homeless crisis in the city under I-10?
I do remember that.
I went down there. This is no kidding. Steve was my aide at the time and went down and talked to a couple of these folks. Mm-hmm. There was a guy that came here from Oklahoma and said he came here because he heard there was a lot of free services.
Really?
I'm not kidding, man. I'm not kidding. So, I mean, we want to help people, but we gotta make sure that we're not a refugee for a lot of this, because it's not going to make the community better. We want to take care of the folks who can, but we can't take care of everyone. And I always go ahead. I'm sorry, Vernon.
No, I'm just making just an offside light joke of it. But I guess we're going to become the sanctuary cities for the homeless.
Yeah, I don't know if you want that. I'll tell you, I deal with it at the Suburban Lodge, at Checkers, at Marcello's, at Jones Swamp, at Lexington Terrace Park, at Osceola Park. It's really sad. I mean, and as a nurse, I look at homelessness in kind of three categories, right? You got someone that maybe they lost their job, they're living in their car, we can try to help. Those people are recoverable, right?
Yeah.
And then you got the low level addiction. It's maybe on alcohol or marijuana or something like that, where if they can get some help, they can get back to be a productive citizen. Right. Then you go in the two other phases, and this is just me because I've worked in the medical field. You got the hardline drug people that is really, really hard to break that, and they're going to have to go into an intensive medical treatment to try to get them off those drugs because, they're so addictive, right? And then you've got the actual true mental health folks that have schizophrenia, bipolar. I'm not talking basic depression. I'm talking where they need medications, medical oversight just to function, right? And if they don't do that, they go back off and they're on the streets and talking and stuff. So to me, there's a lot of different pillars of homelessness, and there's some we can definitely help right away, and there's others that are way more difficult, right? Way more difficult for us to tackle. And it really bothers me when people say, hey, it's this homeless situation. You got to look at it like a medical professional would look at it, because it's not as cut and dry as a lot of times we put it in that sandbox. And it's not like that. And I can tell you from a guy that's been around it, when I was in the emergency room, I've seen this all over. And there's, and that's how I tell you, if we can help the folks, those are the ones we got to target. The ones that, the ones we need to, the state needs to help us a little bit more with some of the ones that need extreme mental health oversight, medical management, case management to get off the streets, because those are really difficult, Vernon. They're very, very difficult to get off the streets.
Yeah, I know we deal with a lot of them with our veterans organization. So you have a lot of veterans. That's
they're dealing with PTSD and demons in their head, and of course almost always there's some form of addiction involved. Not always, but a good amount of the time they're trying to cope with something, and then that doesn't help the situation, right? And I'll tell you, rock bottom ain't rock bottom for everyone. Rock bottom ain't living in a tent if you can get food every day. A lot of people, they'll keep going. It's you think, I know for me, if I was living in a park in a tent and going on a corner to get enough to eat every day, I think I'd be at rock bottom. But for some people, that's not rock bottom. And you got to get to rock bottom before you could change. As a nurse, I did health promotion, so behavioral change it's difficult when you're trying to get someone off cigarettes or cholesterol, weight management or any of those things. We all struggle with something. We all do. We all deal with something.
I kind of got an appreciation for it one time, Mike. I didn't really understand why people want to live on the streets. Okay. But I had a cousin one time that he was in the military. He did 2 or 3 tours in Vietnam. Okay. And obviously when he came back home, and he would always sleep out on the porch. And his mother said, I can't get him to come inside. He couldn't understand that. She said, well, he talked to him about doing that. He occasionally would come in, but most of the time he liked sleeping out on the porch. And the reason for that, he said that, look, I've been in Vietnam for 2 or 3 tours. We sleep out in all kinds of weather. Yeah. I'm not comfortable. His PTSD was acting up when you get into closed spaces and stuff like that. Sure. He felt confined and everything. And it was just his way of dealing with his own reality and his own life at that moment in time. People didn't understand why he was doing that. But sometimes, going back to what you were saying, it's a lot of medical undertone here that needs to be dealt with, that folks.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I haven't done ER and ICU for years, but when I did out in the Bay Area, you'd see this all the time. And then there's just the affordability thing where a lot of people don't have shelter, and they don't have the money, and the next thing, that's how they learn how to survive. And people learn how to survive the way they can. But I hope. Did you say that was your cousin?
Cousin. Yeah. He did.
Did he get the help he needed?
No, he did not never get the help he needed. No, now he didn't. We couldn't get him to get help, Mike. That was part of the problem. Sometimes we would say about you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And,
that's it. You're right. And we have that problem here. You could, and I know a lot of people don't like the waterfront mission. You can't be on, drugs. I don't even think you can take pets and some of those restrictions, and at one point we got some government money and the city wanted to build a low barrier shelter, and the location was kind of the problem. No one wanted to take that on, right? Because as soon as you put that in your neighborhood, everyone's upset. But that was one of the solutions that, the Councilwoman Pat was working real hard on. And then we were never able to get a place for that to happen. So waterfront missions, that's our main resource for homelessness in Escambia County. But besides we have tons of food banks. Oh my gosh. Tons of food banks. But the last thing I want to see is people starving on the street. I don't want to live in a community like that. I don't.
Mike, what's the, not being particularly involved with this, not understanding all this and looking at the bird view point of it, sometimes I see that and I think something, I don't know whether this is with the city or the county, they got some hotel they're trying to do something with, either tear it down or revise it or something. Seems to me places like that might be an ideal shelter.
That lodge over off of Cervantes that the city owns.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. It's right there at Pace and I can't remember the name of that lodge, but it's actually barely in District 2 over there in Brownsville. Yeah. It's in the city proper.
Right.
They were supposed to do something like that there, and it fell through.
But why? But why does it? I mean, seems to me, I don't, maybe because I don't understand all the politics around it, but seems to me it would be better to do something like that if you're going to find shelters for the homeless.
Here's the problem, Vernon. Once the government takes over something like that, you really need to have some sort of oversight, because a lot of times, like you said, these people aren't mentally stable yet.
Yeah,
you can get into some violence. You can get into sexual assault. You got a lot of other things that happened in these homeless camps. When we had the one over there, that was one of the things that was happening over there. There's a lot of, you're not dealing with people a lot of times in a sane state. So you got, you really need someone there that can make sure that, and I will tell you, when the old Salvation Army, they used to have women and children over there kind of close to where Baptist is. It was over in Commissioner May's district. When I was on the health authority, I went over there. That was run really, really good, and Vinny Webbs, you know him?
Yeah.
He was the guy pushing that. But then he did another one up on Palafox, and it just became too expensive. And so I gave him, this is no joke, my first year as a commissioner, he came to the board and I gave him $5,000 from my discretionary because they were going to kick those women and children out of that Salvation Army. And I said, man, God, I can't do that. I mean, the men, I have a little less sensitivity, but women and children, I said, I can't do this, man. And the board voted for it, but then they end up having to find him another place. He couldn't keep it open. And so, we as a society, we got to do better. That's just the fact. We got to do better.
All right. Since you mentioned,
go ahead.
Go ahead. You finish your thought. But that's why
we're going back to circling back to where we are. We've got such a big problem now in Escambia County dealing with the situation with how many, the last count was, I believe, over 1,000 homeless people in Escambia County.
Yeah.
1,000 living on the streets in Escambia County. It was more than that. That's a lot of people, man.
Sure is. Wow.
So, I couldn't believe it when I heard that. But, Opening Doors, which is over in my district over there off New Warrington, they have a whole board that's trying to solve some of these issues and make it better. And then, of course, you got Lakeview and you got, Waterfront Mission, you got the food banks. And, I mean, we've got people trying to make it better. But is it perfect? Absolutely not. But we're in a very peculiar situation, but I can tell you this: we cannot take everyone else's. They got to figure out some of their resources because we don't have enough resources to deal with the homeless we have in Escambia County now. We just can't do it.
I got another question for you. Okay. You mentioned the word discretionary funds. And number one, explain to us what the purpose of discretionary funds. And number two, I know the problem commissioners are having now in allocating discretionary funds. So where are we with that? And
okay,
go ahead.
When I was the chair, so they've had discretionary funds, I think forever. I don't know when they didn't have them, but they were there long before I became a commissioner. And commissioners would get $50,000 a year to help supplement different things.
Right.
Some people would argue some things shouldn't have been supplemented. Some are, let's say you need extra money for a sidewalk. Okay. or like Commissioner Hoppiger wanted to put cameras at the beach, or trash cans at a park that weren't there. Okay, but then some people say, well, they shouldn't go for school activities. You know what? The truth, I've voted for those, but I really do think the school board or the Children's Trust should use that money to support the school side. Even though I've supported a lot of those programs, especially for Commissioner Berry and Commissioner May. But I do think, man, the Children's Trust, and where I'm going at with that is, you had that Washington basketball girls that went to state, and Commissioner May, I think, wanted to put $1,000 bucks. Right. I don't remember, it was 1,000 or something up, and of course the clerk didn't want to pay it. Well, honestly, the school board should have a plan, in my opinion, for kids that go to state or regional championships. That probably shouldn't be the county commission, or it should be the Children's Trust. And I'm gonna bring that up with Lindsay Cannon. Why aren't you guys supplementing these additional?
That sounds to me like a good project for the Children's Trust Fund. That we said Children's Trust. Man, when you think that,
I would. So on that aspect, I can agree with the clerk. Maybe we need to do that better. But and here's the thing. When I was chair, we changed it to community support funds versus discretionary, and we tightened up the wording. And our legal staff sat down with her legal staff, and we tried to make it so that we could get to a common ground, right? Well, then she didn't honor her part of the agreement. And this is where the clerk and I have known Pam for years. I like Pam, but she paid discretionary funds long before I was ever commissioner for 12 years to the tune over $1.5 million. She stopped paying them. So all these folks that say, "Oh, I'm with Pam." Well, were you with her when she was paying them for $1.5 million for 12 years?
Right.
So, you can't have it both ways. So, and now she's pushing back.
So what is her idea on how the commissioners should use the discretionary fund? The word is discretionary is self-defined, isn't it? But what does she think you should use it for?
Is, you could argue that the clerk is obviously has fiduciary responsibility and oversight over spending the money. I agree with that. But that should be rare and infrequent when she goes against the board.
Right.
In my opinion, and this will have to be decided in a courtroom, but I'm a layman, but the commissions across the state decide public purpose of funds. There's many cases that say that what we've done and what our legal team says we've done is legal. Is it? I'm not a lawyer. I'm just telling you what our lawyers and other lawyers are telling me, that this is legal. It's not there. What it's doing is not uncommon. City council, every city council member gets $25,000 a year discretionary. The mayor gets $50,000. I don't hear anyone raising Cain about that. Santa Rosa County gets $25,000 per commissioner. I mean, I've talked to commissioners all across the state, and they're not dealing with this. Should we make it better? Should we make it cleaner? Should we? Yes. And we always have to vote on it. Absolutely. And so for me, I'm not really bought into discretionary funds, but let's say, we're building a new park out at Perdido Key, and they didn't fund for trash cans. Well, that's something where you said, hey, let's buy $3,000 of nice trash cans and put out there, take them out of my discretionary funds. I don't think anyone would say that's not public purpose, right?
Right.
No one would say that, or say there's a road that I don't have enough money in engineering and they need another $20,000 to be resurfaced. And I say, okay, take this $20,000 to supplement that road so we can do that. That's public purpose. There's all kinds of examples where when people get upset, you can show that there's a need and that you can use these. I think the clerk's biggest issue is the nonprofits. She doesn't like funding those. And Alex Andrade, Senator or State Representative Andrade, was the one that spearheaded this. One was with First Tee, which I think every commissioner except for maybe Commissioner Stroberger had donated to him. And they basically have a golf program that teaches leadership skills to school kids. He probably just needs to go to the Children's Trust and ask them for money, honestly. And then the second one was the food bank in Warrington that's been around for 40 years. and
Right.
they have some guidelines, and they help some of the people that are really low income and need some help just to have basic subsistences to survive. And I don't have a problem with food banks that help people that are low income and are having a hard time buying groceries. I know some people, but I'm not going to let people starve to death in Escambia County. I'm
Right.
sorry, not going to do it. I think that's crazy. And the churches can't do it all. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Everyone says, "Oh, let the churches do it." The food bank where Warrenton Emergency Aid Center is at, I think there's 25 members in that Presbyterian church. It's a very small church, so they need help. So
Exactly.
but I will tell you this: they have been raising a lot of money to try to help, and and I think that's a good thing. But it's like anything, the visibility, after it goes away for a while, people forget. So, but I don't know where it's going to land. Here's the deal: in a perfect situation, you try to work with your constitutionals just like you do your board members, and you try to come to common ground. I thought I did that with the clerk with the community support funds, and it blew up on me. So I don't know. I hope that I ain't interested in lawsuits. I didn't ask for this lawsuit, so I don't know where it's going to land. But it's definitely it's over in Okaloosa with Judge Stone, and we'll see what he decides.
Okay. All right. Before we run out
But
of
the
time,
county's
Mike,
not paying anything for that. The county's not paying anything for that lawsuit. Nothing. We have we're not one nickels went for that lawsuit. I don't know what the clerk's playing. She may be, and we're talking $7,000, man. It's crazy. And her legal fees, if she gets outside counsel, it's going to be way more than $7,000.
Absolutely.
That's actually terrible that we would waste taxpayer dollars.
Exactly. Would you want to me? I would rather put that $7,000 going to a community good than to pay attorney fees. Where you pay 2 and 3 times more that in attorney fees.
Oh yeah, who knows what those will be? But they'll be disclosed. But the thing is we should be able to get to yes on stuff like this or get to common ground. That in a $900 million budget, when the Children's Trust is wasting sometimes $3,000 to $4,000 for one child in an after-school program, and $1,000 for Washington to hire a food bank. I mean, I'm like, all right. I mean, I'll listen to everyone. I don't know what to say. I mean, we can help me out. I got some real areas we can cut some money, man. That's a real waste.
Mike, before we run out of time, I understand you were running for re-election. Let's get some re-election time coming in, because we want to see you my personal kind of commissioner, and I want to see
you're the lucky guy to have a nice guy like me representing you, Vernon.
Yeah, you're right about that, Mike. I had a lot of kind of commissions in the 50 years I've been here, Mike, and you have so far been my most favorite and most responsive. And I'm not saying this hypothetically, or whatever that word is saying. I'm not happiness. I'm talking about real world experience. Okay, I got a little park. When we got into this subdivision, I built my house here in 1977. Among that for that subdivision, part of that subdivision, we supposed to have had a little park that's associated with it. For many years, we did not have that park. Then finally, somebody came in probably about 10 or 15 years ago and decided they're going to put a few little items in that park. And it just stayed kind of dormant there for a while. In the last 2 years, I've seen more activities in that park. They done replaced all of the stuff in. It's a small park, and you asked me the name of it, and I live right across the street from it. Since it's been there, and it was named after an individual. I can't call his name out, but anyway, and I just noticed the other day, Mike, and I want to thank you for that. They saying they even got surveillance around this park now.
Yeah, we got a lot of parks with cameras, because we sometimes at night they turn into kind of areas where some bad activity can happen sometimes. But,
Yeah.
you know, I got to thank Mike Rose. We have put so much money into parks in District 2. One of my opponents, he does, you know, from Lexington Terrace to Perdido Estates, even Mayfair, Lakewood, your park, Civitan Park, a lot of new equipment, a lot of new, you know, mulching. You know, I mean, there's just been all kinds of money put into parks in District 2. And, you know, it's refreshing. You know, people really like to have those green spaces and have the ability to go and maybe sit and have a lunch or just sit out and watch kids play or have their grandkids play or, you know, and parks are a big amenity and help neighbors become more, you know, communal. So I'm glad that Mike did that. You know, if you ever have a need, Vernon, you call me and I'll reach out to him and see what I can do to help you. But he does a great job.
Well, they've done an excellent job. My grandkids love to go over that little park, and it's a small park, but it's nice now. It's really nice. It's they got brand new stuff in it now. It's brand new swing, brand new monkey bars, all the lighting now. That was some of the stuff that we didn't have before. So
we've done a
so that's
lot
worth
with
a
parks.
vote for you for District 2. There's nothing else.
Well, it's not just that. You know, my opponent beats up on roads. We've done so many roads, man. We did Bio Grande. We did half of Beach Haven. We did Old Gold Beach High. We did 69th. We did, we're doing the northern part of Myrtle Grove. We did Barrancas. We did Old Quarryfield Road. We did some roads in Mayfair. I'm like, I mean, we're doing roads right and left, you know, but there's the part of the problem is that's just in District 2, Vernon. That's just in District 2.
Right.
You know, but you're never going to get every road. We have a software program that basically goes out and looks at the roads. They've looked at every county road in the county. And it basically, they have an app that tells you what road should be resurfaced next.
Right.
And so when I sit down with engineering, I know the condition of the roads. And so, and they give it, we're putting right now another $1 million into roads this year in District 2. So, and I got the list of the roads. I could rattle them off, but I have them on. I had Dorothy send them to me today, but you know, that's a big project. Roads are important to people, and you know, but I just think sometimes if your road hasn't been resurfaced, you don't think there's been any road resurfacing. We have done tons of road resurfacing. We've put 15 miles of sidewalks up in Escambia County. So there's been a lot of infrastructure in stormwater drainage. Oh my gosh. We have done so, and we don't have a stormwater drainage assessment like the city, but we got a lot of money under the old ARPA funds when Biden was in, about a little under 62 million. And then obviously we've got some money from the state and FWC. And so we've done a ton of stormwater drainage projects over the last few years, which hopefully will help a lot of communities throughout the county.
Okay. What do you want to tell the voters out there that looking to hopefully reelect you this
Vernon, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been beating the streets almost every day, hitting doors. People seem to be happy. I haven't had too many people, you know, there's some people complain about this or that, you know, but after maybe I explained to them how the TPO works or, you know, homeless comes up a little bit. People, you know, they'll just say, Mike, I appreciate what you're doing. You know, we may not always agree, but I think you try to be straight and honest with me. And I will, and I'll do that. I'll do that if I get reelected. And, you know, you don't ever take any vote for granted. I tell people, reach out to my office, 595-4920. I got a retired chief in there that I've known forever. I've got Cheryl. I've known for 40 years. She was a GS employee at the hospital. She's 73 and she's there Monday and Tuesday. And we're committed to helping the citizens of District 2. If you call into my office or send an email to district2@myescambia.com, if we can help you, we will. And I promise you, people know it. I have people everywhere I go, they say, you know, this guy responds to us. And if I can't, someone will call and tell you, like, we can't do this. And here's why. Sometimes we can't. I had a lady over off of Gold Beach the other day, wanted a tree cut down. Tree wasn't dead. I said, ma'am, and she was upset. Her husband was passing. And I talked to her for a while and I had him come down and that we could cut one of the trees down. It was in the easement. It was a pine. It wasn't doing good, but there was a lot of, I said, I can't cut this tree down. We had the arborist go out there. And she was upset, but I think she appreciated that I just was straight with her.
Yeah.
That, I can't do that for everyone in the county, right? But if I can help you, I will. And
Right.
so, I'm going to do some other stuff personally for her to help her out with her situation, because it's, I don't want to get into that, but she's just going through a tough time.
Well,
but,
see, Mike, that's what we need, people like yourself that caring. I think that the lack of empathy and caring for people is our problem. And so obviously you are caring. Well, you're a nurse. You gotta. So that's nature. That's your nature. I'm assuming. But you're a caring person about other people, and that's what we need more in politics. If we can,
Vernon,
we can just,
I get my energy off trying to find solutions to problems.
yeah.
And you're right. I appreciate that, but I'm not driven by money. I'm not driven. I really do care that if you can help someone and you can go home and say, look, I made my community better. The people said, why didn't you run for state rep, or why didn't you do that? I love what I'm doing. I love when I drive down there and say, I fixed that problem. I fixed this.
Yeah.
Why is this mattress over here? Where do these mattresses come from? Where are they dropping mattresses and chairs on them? I don't know where they come from. But the bottom line is, it's okay. I do the best I can. I'm not going to fix everything, but I'm trying. And I think I have a lot of metrics to prove I've done a pretty good job. So I appreciate that, Vernon. And, to your listeners, I hope I can earn their vote. I promise I'll work as hard as I did the next 4 years as I did this 4 years. And I never take for granted. So I respectfully request your vote. And if you need something, reach out and ask me. And if you have a problem, I'll listen. And maybe I am wrong. Sometimes I am, right? Yeah, you got to own it when you're wrong and just and adjust accordingly.
Yeah. So what's on your bucket list after you get elected this time that we can look forward to in the next 4 years?
Yes. So the two things, I want to see the 2 fire departments get built, the one on Lillian and the one in Pleasant Grove. I want to see the library on Myrtle Grove, that we put in. Now, if this tax thing goes through, that could be a problem, but we're going forward with the design now. So we'll see what happens. That's something I got to if Tallahassee throws some sort of curveball at us, we'll have to readjust. The other thing is, Gulf Beach Highway and Blue Angel are 2 roads that are moving up. Gulf Beach Highway is way behind.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see that started. And I'm very committed to the South Navy Boulevard project. I've got a plan to get more money. As you know, that the $1.5 million that we put in legislative priorities is on the governor's desk. I hope he signs it. It's in the budget. He could veto it, but if you're listening, Governor DeSantis, it's the right thing. It's a regional project. I think you should sign the $1.5 million. I'm asking you to please do that for the veterans in our community.
Yeah, I know one of the things you had on your agenda in your bucket list that you was going to try to do something for Rosalynn Johnson.
I was with Petronas a little bit ago. I am working with his staff. They have all the stuff. The problem with that is got to go to the Pentagon. I need to keep following up on that. But I met with that family, Vernon. We gave them all the documentation to Congressman Petronas' staff, and they're working with the Pentagon, and that's where it is right now. And as you know, it'll probably have to go to a special awards board. But I've done my part to try to push it up.
But that's all we can ask of you, Mike. Is you doing your part, and we really appreciate that. All right, we're about to run out of time. Tell us, wrap it up and tell us anything you hadn't already talked about that you want your folks to know.
There's so many things we didn't get to. I wanted to talk about ADC. We'll do that
well, we
next
can do,
time.
well, you got open. Let's talk about it if you want to.
Well, I just think it's important. So, I was at the Associated Defense Communities a couple of weeks ago because I'm on the Northwest Florida Defense Coalition. And we were there and found out that the Navy is going to put $2 billion in infrastructure across the installations across the globe. And it looks like they're going to put a substantial amount of money into Corey Station for barracks, which is very good news. And the CEO of the base mentioned the other day at our Tri-County Military Forum that we got $21 million for infrastructure that Guam didn't use. So some very positive information. That's great news for the base, great news for the development on the west side, great news to keep our bases fortified and protected for our economy. So really, I can't, I mean, it takes everyone. That's not Mike Kohler, but it took, the base CO, Vice Admiral Gray, our federal delegation, which gets what's going on here. They know I'm a pain in the rear end, but I'm fighting like you cannot imagine for every nickel for our bases. And I think that alone is probably one of the reasons people ought to reelect me, because you have the best guy to do that. I have the 33 years in the Navy. When I was in 04, I worked up on the Hill and for Admiral Escavage and Admiral Turner. I understand the ins and outs of it, and you just would lose someone that has a lot of corporate knowledge on what to do and try to get that money back to Escambia County.
And that's true. That's true. Because at one time, the military was the mainstay of Northwest Florida. Not as much today as it used to be, but we still want to protect what we got now.
We lost NADAPs, but Corey's growing. The CT, they have to bus 800 kids a day from NAS over to Corey, and they're putting in a C school there. So
really? They're putting a C school in at Corey?
Yeah, that's what I was told is coming. I don't know if it's been. I probably hope I didn't say something I shouldn't have, but I don't know if it's happened yet, but I think it's happening. So if I said something wrong, I'm sorry, Skipper. But yeah, I was told they're going to put a C school out there for crypto, so I hope I didn't get ahead of her.
Okay,
but
very good.
We'll see, Yeah.
That's good. Very good. Very good.
Yeah,
and they still got the training down on aviation field. I know NAS, that's all the
you got all the aviation schools, and obviously they're training all the pilots out there, and then you got all the tenant commands. See, I was an ex out there at Navy Mess and Operational Tenant Command. So you have NAMI and NISTY and SWIMMY, which is out in California, and NUMI up in Groton, and then we have the Fleet Hospital, and then SOMI, which is at Fort Bragg. And then under that, all the 8 Naval Survivor training sites, which there's 8 across the United States. I mean, that was my job as an XO. We had 6 detachments across the across the United States. It's a huge job. I don't think people realize how many, and then, you got CNET out there as all the enlisted training across the United States as well. So we got a pretty good posture still out there. You got the 479th out there. Obviously, everyone knows the Blue Angels. They're a very small footprint with the biggest voice or, a marketing tool is the Blue Angel. We never want to get rid of them, but yeah. Well, I mean, they're like our county slogan, right? Everyone loves the Blue Angels, but yeah, so good stuff. No, a lot of good things happening. And I think when we share these things with people, they can be proud of what's going on in their community and the base, and it's going to get better. It's going to keep getting better, man.
Well, very good, very good. What else we missed?
Base Center, nothing new. We're working well with the city on that. It's going slower than I like, but it's going pretty good. The White Island project around the base, the fortification, man, that's turned into a beautiful project. That's
really.
Oh my gosh, we've started to plant the salt marshes. They're putting trees out there. It goes all the way to Sherman Cove, up by a cove over by the Nazi barracks, and then over by this sailing where you go on the bridge. It is a big project. It was $38 million. And the county, I think, put $60,000 in. It was all grant money. It was but that all came from Sally. They had a lot of damage on the base, and now they built these barrier islands out there to kind of protect from a hurricane the base. So hopefully it works. But boy, it was a really, really great project for District 2 and the base. So I'm really proud of that.
I got to get in my car and toot it. I hadn't been out there on the base just to look around in a long time, Mike. I had to go out there and take a look.
Well, you're coming over that bridge. Take a look at the left, and you're going to look like, what is this? It looks something like Crab Island over in Destin. I was walking around on Saturday afternoon, and there was boats, and I mean, I don't even own a boat, but there were boaters out there, paddle boaters out there. I mean, everything under the sun out there that were like recreating. And we have a lot of it roped off right now. Where we first started planting the trees in salt marsh, they put up signs, don't go on this island, because right now we're planting, and no one was on it. I really appreciated them honoring the signs, and they were on the other barrier islands. I was like, okay, well, that's cool. And, eventually that will be a nice recreation site if you're into water sports. I mean, like I said, I don't have a boat, but, people, paddleboard, kayak, whatever you're into out there, and it'll be nice for everybody.
Okay.
And it protects the base. That's the most important thing. It protects the base. So that's good. So, no, that's it, Vernon. I'll let we covered a lot of ground. We've been doing it for a little over an hour, but I'm glad to share some time with you. And next month we'll do it again, and I'll try to give your viewers an update on what's going on currently in the next month.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing your update with. So you're doing something different that nobody has done before. You never had your kind of commission to come on and talk about, even though they may do great things. Maybe they hear it through the newspaper or hear it through there, but you don't get it from, pardon the pun, but you don't get it from the horse's mouth.
Vernon, I go to so many neighborhood groups, you just can't imagine it. Next Monday, I'll be out at Bio Grande. I'm always at WRC, Bio Davenport. I go to Bio Chica meetings. I go to Brownsville about every other month. I go to Mayfair. I mean, I go to as many, as I want. I was over in Osceola the other night. They invited me to come to a neighborhood meeting. I said, all right, I'm going. I go to a men's group at the Methodist Church in Myrtle Grove. If they ask me, it don't matter. If you ask me and you got a neighborhood group, people say, "Why you do town halls?" I said, "I only do about 10 to 14 a month." If you can't find Mike Kohler, man, you ain't looking, because I'm all over, and I ain't even joking. But I like being accessible, and this helps get the information out. So I appreciate it, Vernon.
It does. All right, Mike. Well, when we gonna do it again? You have any idea?
Is this my last one?
I don't know. I got to look on the secret. I don't think so.
I guess we'll do it next month, the first Monday in July, right?
Yep, it'll be always the first Monday of the month.
Yeah,
so let's plan on that.
Okay, and then we'll do it up until we get to the general, I guess.
Yeah.
So I got it. The primary is August 18th.
Yeah.
And I got one Republican running. He's homesteaded in Gulf Breeze, but I guess now he's got a place in Myrtle Grove, which just closed on in March.
Can we talk about that for a minute, Mike? Because I don't understand that. I thought you don't have to live in your district until you get elected. What? Help me understand.
He bought a place in off of Fairfield. It's an apartment condo, and but he still's homesteading his home in Gulf Breeze, and I don't know what he's doing. He just got it. I just worry about my race, right? But no, you can. That's the law in Florida. It's the same thing with city council. I could run in Miami and live here, and then if I won, I just have to move down there. But he's actually bought a piece of property there. He went and got his voter's card. He just got it recently to vote in Escambia, but I don't know him that well, Vernon, to know what his motives are. I really don't. I don't know, but people in District 2 know who I am, and I'm asking for their vote. And I think they'd be happy with what they're going to get, because they can see the results from the last 4 years.
To me, it's kind of crazy to me that to elect somebody that is not a part of your district, don't know much about your district, just to get the feet on the ground and get to him. By the time he understands what's going on, his term is up. By the way, are y'all term limited by any chance?
No, we're not. And I've always been a term limit guy, but boy, I'll tell you, the constitutionals do not want term limits. And this is where I'm in a pickle, because the commissioner, now there are term limits for some commissioners in chartered counties in the state. But we're not a chartered county. But what I will tell you is, so we're not term limited, but if I'm for term limits, but I believe that they should be for all the constitutionals as well as the commissioners, because we do their budgets. And if you were flipping them over, and we'll be interested to see. So after this next cycle, you're going to have, I think, 3 school board members that will be term limited, and 2 or 3 ECUA members that are going to be term limited. So after this 4 years, I know Paul and I believe Kevin and I think David Williams will be too, right? If he gets reelected, he's on his second term. So all three of them will be term limited. And then on the ECOA, you've got Lois Benson, Vicky Campbell, Kevin Stevens, I believe, will be term limited. And so you're going to have literally all the corporate knowledge on those boards gone.
Really?
Yeah. So it'll be a good test to see if it works out at the local level. The staff will definitely have a lot more firepower. But a lot of people want term limits, but the best term limit is to get out and vote against someone you don't like. That's the best way to get rid of someone. If someone's not doing their job, and I mean this, I think if you're happy with what you got and they're doing something for you, I'd ask for your vote. But if you're asking me I think we should land in a perfect world, 12-year term limits for everyone, constitutionals and commissioners, because I think 12 years would probably, after 12 years, people are probably sick of looking at you. Even if they do like you, they probably say, man, you probably need to go do something else, right? No matter what job you're in. And then the other thing, then I think that if it was the constitutionals too, it would just be a fair budgeting process. We give a lot of money to the sheriff, about $96 million, and everyone's for public safety, including me. I worked real well with the sheriff on his budget, and I think he was happy with it, and the board voted 5-0 for it. But what I will tell you is, I just think that the push and pull may be a little harder with the constitutionals if they had very junior commissioners or commissioners that had never done budgeting before, and that could hurt some of the county services. That's one of the things I'm worried about. So,
okay, all right. But, what else, Mike, that we didn't cover yet?
Well, we covered a lot of ground. I guess we can call it for tonight. It's a little after 9 now, but until the next time or whatever, next month, I'll make a laundry list. But man, an hour goes with you pretty quick. I don't know if I'm just a talker or what, but it goes pretty quick with you, Vernon.
Yeah, no, time flies when you're having fun, Mike.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man.
Sure is.
Did you do anything with the whole fiesta, the parade last week? And I wasn't down there, but did you do anything with the fiesta parade?
No, I did not get a chance to I didn't get a chance to get down there. I wanted to go down there, Mike, but I didn't get a chance to do anything last week. I was tied up on other projects.
Well, that's all good. I see you guys around. Where was I with the other day that your group was at? And I've been going to so many things, but is that your son that works with you?
No, that's my business partner. You talking about?
Okay, I didn't know.
My son worked with me too, but
I know where I was. I was out at Brancas for the Memorial Day.
Yeah, that's where it was. Yeah, that's Troy. Troy Mims. Troy Mims is my partner. He go out and do the video stuff out in the field for me and stuff like that.
I talked to him for a quick minute out there. Yeah, it was real nice.
He'll talker now. I'm telling you. He'll talk.
It was all good. It was a special day. The rain held off for us a little bit, and it was a good day, man. We're very fortunate to have Brancas National Cemetery. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and it was a very nice ceremony. The CO had some great things to say, and we got a break from the rain, and it was a special day.
Mike, I want to tell you another quick story before you go. We're talking about when God smiled on you, have a break from the rain. About 8 or 9 years ago, we responsible to having the Veterans Day Parade. Well, 8 or 9 years ago, we had this. Oh man, it rained so hard the morning of. But Joe Herring, you got to know Joe. Joe is just as hard headed as you want to be. He said, Joe, we need to cancel the parade. He said, no, we're not going to cancel the parade. We're not going to cancel the parade. And I'd never seen the rain like that before. But then, just that we supposed to have been rolling out at 9 o'clock or something like that. There's a break. I swear to God, that was a break in the weather. Stopped completely. The parade is not that long. We went through the parade. It must have been about 45 minutes to the parade. And as the last car passed through that parade, the bottom fell out. I said, Joe, why in the hell were we having a parade in this kind of weather? His position is, well, Vernon, when I was in Vietnam, we didn't have the luxury to go in and out of the rain. We didn't have none of that kind of stuff. So why should
He
I said,
was
I
Army.
understand.
Joe was Army, I think. If it ain't raining, we ain't training. That's what the Army says, right?
You know what he said?
Well, I remember. Was it the first year? Was it the MLK parade, or was it the? And I think it was the Veterans Parade. I was down there with you.
Yeah.
And I think it was the Veterans Parade.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was when you were down there. That was just we had a little tent. That was just sprinkle compared to what we had before. It was just like the weather y'all had for Memorial Day, but you had a little break in it. You had enough break in it to do the service, and then before and after was a whole different story.
Look, it was raining and then it stopped. I know the skipper was happy. I mean, all the chairs were wet when we went up. They had towels trying to wipe them down, and but it worked out. But Joe did a good job. He was out there, and of course, he's real committed to him and Arnita, that Gulf Coast veterans. I love those guys, man. And it was a very nice ceremony. And then all the veterans groups, they go up and they always say who has passed. If you're a member of the Legion or AMVETS or whatever, VFW or any of them, they have all of them come up and talk. It doesn't matter. And the Gulf Coast Navy nurse announces it, and MOA. I mean, they have every veterans organization. There's probably they had 10 to 15 different organizations come up. And they announced the members that had passed this year. And, I knew a lot of them. I'm thinking, man, when I die, I'm going to be about 5 or 6 different organizations going to announce me. I'm in AMVETS, the VFW, the American Legion, the Gulf Coast Navy Nurses Service. I'm in MOA. I'm in the Scambia Veterans. I'm like, I got to stay alive, man.
Right. One thing leads to another. Now you just triggered a thought in my mind. I need to ask you about this. I think Petronas is working on this too, and folks want to see a veterans hospital in the area and everything. But I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got a question for you. We got a naval hospital out there, and I know these are two different agencies, but is that being fully utilized or underutilized?
No, it's kind of sad. Vernon, I can talk about this for an hour. I used to teach it, but DHA wanted to get out of the business of a lot of inpatient care. And so they went to basically ambulatory care services. So that hospital is not functioning at the level it did in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. I mean, even 2010 when we started inpatient and ER family residency program. You had just any emergency room. I mean, you had all kinds of services out there. When I was the director of healthcare business, we had a VA sharing agreement where veterans would come there and use the ER. So now that's all. They have done a few things, to do some same day surgery with the VA and all. But it's sad for a guy that was a corpsman and a nurse out there. It's just, I don't know if it's coming back. But I will tell you, there is a different pot of money, and it's in the veterans, the VA. Petronas is doing a study. I meant to ask him this tonight. It was a packed house. He was at an event tonight I was at with probably 100 people, but that question didn't come up. But I've talked to him about it, and I've talked to his staff about it, and they're looking at that. I will tell you on a state level, so, Florida Association of Counties and the veteran, I can't remember the general's name. His call name's Hammer. Hartzell. I'm skipping it. I'm missing it on my hammer now. But he was at last year's legislative priorities when we went there, right? Mm-hmm. And they're building a Florida veteran state hospital in Collier and Marion County. Mm-hmm. And they want to put one in the Panhandle in 3 to 5 years. So I went up and talked to him afterwards and said, look, I'd love to have like a memory care center, a VA nursing home, a state VA, not a federal, right?
Right, yeah.
And he listened, and I plan on next year when I go over there, working with him again and telling him, look, I'd love to work with you to have this in Escambia County. Now, they haven't picked a site yet, but it is on their forecast to do something like that in the Panhandle in the next 3 to 5 years. Now, on the federal side, I'd love to see a VA hospital like what they have in Biloxi. We have way more enrollment. So what we call in this world, you call it our enrollment for the areas just in Escambia County is 41,000 veterans that would be eligible. In the region, it's around 140,000, right? When you look, the people that go to Biloxi Biloxi's prison has around 19,000. And these numbers may have changed a little bit, but we had over double here in Escambia County. We should have it, and they got a really nice veterans hospital over there. I used to go over there once in a while when I was a commander, a director of healthcare business. But look, everyone here has to drive 2 hours, and if you're to the east of us, even farther. And they've got a lot of great services, and they're an hour away from New Orleans, which has a beautiful VA hospital now. So I don't know where they came up with.
Let me ask this story. Let me ask this. I know politics matter, and I know probably the reason we got it over in Mississippi because of Stennis and New Orleans.
It was Trent Lott. Was it
Trent Lott? Okay, Trenton.
Yep,
and then over in New Orleans where they built that boondoggle of a hospital where they really didn't need one years ago. I don't know that you remember that big hospital they had over there?
That was the one on the East Bank, wasn't it?
Yeah, East Bank. Yeah, it was on the West Bank. Yeah,
it
was on East Bank.
No, that was in the West Bank where Mark Forrest is. You're right. I think that's the one you're talking about.
Exactly.
I ran the clinic. I ran the clinic when I ran that clinic from 15 to 18 over in New Orleans.
Did you really
do that? Yes, I was in charge of that.
Wow.
From 2015 to 18, and then when it wasn't a hospital, they went down to an ambulatory care clinic, but then we put a medical annex in Mar Res. But Ron Fink, a retired Navy captain, he was the CO of that, and then he was my boss when I was lieutenant. But yeah, that was crazy.
Well, from a layman's point of view, which I don't understand, I know a lot more involved with it. But I think I was just thinking, all the monies that they taken to destroy, let's say Baptist Hospital for an example, okay? Why wouldn't somebody would seem to me it would have been money well spent if they converted that hospital to a veteran hospital or something like that?
I've never seen a hospital. Hey, I've never seen a hospital in my life that was fully functional. And the minute you went out, it was a complete, toxic waste zone. There was so much environmental problems, but we had patients there for years. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Hey, that would keep them in business, Mike. Come on.
Yeah, I don't know.
You got to have something to attract them there and something to keep them there, right? I'm just talking about
people, that. But that's in the city. I'm gonna let the mayor deal with that one and stay out of it, man, because that's his baby. But from my standpoint, there's a lot of people with what you said, Vernon. When I was on the health authority, there was some problems with that, and Baptists wanted to get out of there. It's obvious, and the city's trying to do something there, and I kind of. I don't know what happened. I haven't really been watching that because I haven't heard about much of that lately. But that's a good question for the city council and the mayor, man, because they're going to do something there, and we'll see what happens. But
like I said,
good question.
To me, from a layman's point of view, I always think about all of the vacant things, like old hotels that could be used for homeless people or.
And I'll tell you, if I could bring life back to the Navy hospital, that would be so special for so many people that, had their children there, that, served there.
How many stories? I'll count the stories. I went about it yesterday.
Eight stories high,
right?
So
how many they using, though? How many floors?
Man, I can tell you floor by floor. So the 8th deck used to be where they delivered babies, Okay. 7th deck was ICU for a while. The 4th deck was a surgical suite. And then it used to have inpatient on 4 and 6. The 5th deck was offices. And then the 3rd deck was the CO suite and, administrative support. Second deck was IT. They had a subway, and then the bottom floor was all ancillary services, family medicine, radiology, ER. But yeah, man, it was fully functioning hospital. I mean, I worked on several floors in that hospital over the years, man, and now they have a little bit of same day surgery, and it's pretty much ambulatory care, family medicine. And I mean, you can still get X-rays and labs and stuff, but there isn't a whole lot.
What happened to a military person? They needed surgery. I mean, serious.
Oh, they'd have to go on the network.
Surgery.
Yeah, they'd go if they had to get a major surgery, they would get a referral out in the network. That's what happens now. So they'd go to one of the local hospitals. Yeah, it could be any of them, Baptist, Sacred, or
Really?
HCA. Yeah, yeah. I give you
Even the women that having babies, they go to the local hospital.
Yeah, every dependent or every active duty or dependent pregnant woman goes out in the network to have a child now. There's no obstetrics at the Navy hospital
So
anymore.
what do the military people? What do they use it for now? Then what happened in
I don't know what they put up on the 8th deck now. I really don't know. I haven't been out now. I go to the hospital, but when I go, I just go to my family medicine provider, and I don't even know what's happened to those floors, honestly. Next time I go, I may go up and look around. For all I know, they could be locked up. Maybe they're admin spaces. I remember when I was there, that place was busy, man. Back in the day when I came here in '89, man, it was a busy hospital.
Hey, what happened? What happened to that barracks? They used to have a barracks there at
Oh
one
my
time.
God, I lived in that when I came here, Vernon.
Did you
I
really?
lived in that barracks with 2 other sailors. I ate every Thanksgiving dinner in the galley because I was a lab tech and I didn't go home, so I always volunteered to work on Thanksgiving. And then, but it's gone. The galley's gone too. The barracks is gone.
Did they repurpose it or did they tear it down?
No, they tore it down. They completely
tore it down.
It's
really?
Torn down, man. Yep, it was torn down. Every time I drive there, I look over there and say, man, I used to just like looking out and saying, what happened? But it's gone, man.
Wow.
And then they don't have enough barrack spaces, but that was old. It probably, and they were 3-man rooms. So you didn't have your own room. You lived with 2 other guys with 1 bathroom, and then they had a communal area because they were kind of like pods. But I'll tell
you something, Mike. Then we gotta go. But I was at my first duty station was at Salford Field, right?
VT1. They're tearing that up.
I know,
literally.
And I lived in the barracks. I lived in 801. Then I lived in 2440, right? Well, 2440.
The prison.
They turned it to the prison, right?
I knew you were a convict.
I went out there one time. I thought they're going to keep me. I was a little nervous a little bit, though, but I went out there to speak for a Black History program for them one time. And they gave me the tour of the prison, right? And we went in, so they used their housings is in 2440, the building that we had our barracks in, right? And Mike, when I toured the 2440 where I used to live, we used to have 4 people to a room, okay?
Yep.
And we had a day room where it had a television.
Yeah.
But the prisoners had 2 people to a room, had its own TV set. I just thought that was just so wrong.
Hey, when I was in Fort Sam, we had 40 guys do a room and 1 bathroom. When I went to boot camp and then to A school, 60-man open barracks. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, man. It was a little different. It was totally different. But you know what? You're recruiting people and they want a different quality of life, and the military's changed. So maybe it's a good thing.
I want to tell you another thing too. You're talking about the open bay barracks. Every time you say something, we got to talk about this. But I know you got to go. But in New Orleans, when I was in the Navy, when I got off of active duty from the Navy, right? I spent 1.5 years in the Navy Reserve down at Allen Callister Field down in New Orleans, right?
Okay.
And the Navy was the reason I switched over to the Air Force, right? Now you're talking about.
Did you say the Chair Force? You said the Chair Force?
No, you know what I'm talking about, the Air Force. The Air Force.
I get that.
Anyway, you couldn't have it. You couldn't have it. But anyway, I've never seen these open bay barracks. We saw them in boot camp, right? But I thought they was non-existent. Well, the reservists, that's what we had. These big old open bay barracks. Just a line of beds down on both sides of the wall. So as you can see, that's where we had to sleep. Now, the Air Force guys were living in the Holiday Inn round there in Gretna. You remember that big Holiday Inn round there in Gretna?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
We had to go to the chow hall and eat the stuff at the chow hall. The reservists, they're paying them to go out, paying them per diem to go out, eat out on the economy and everything. So that is the reason I left the Navy to go into the Air Force, because of the amenities.
You wanted to go to a Holiday Inn Express. Yeah,
I want to
no,
live in the
I'll tell
Holiday Inn
you.
and never got a chance to, but I want to live in the Holiday Inn Express and go out and buy a McDonald's for lunch rather than eating in the chow hall. That was my motivation.
You know what, though? A lot of that builds character. You know, it sounds like it was, you know, back in the day, I thought, man, this is crazy. But you know what? You get through it and you build friendships. And, you know, I think some of that makes you a tighter unit sometimes. But hey, look, it's those days are over. I don't think unless you're in some sort of, you know, war theater situation or on a ship or something, you're going to be living in those kind of conditions in garrison. But yeah, no, you and I have had some of the same similarities, Vernon.
Yeah, you just like my grandmother said, if it don't kill you, it'll just make you stronger. So don't worry about it. That's what she said. All right, Matt, we gotta go now. we done talked an hour and a half. It looked like it only been 15 minutes.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on your show tonight, man. You're a special guy, and to all the listeners, I hope you learned something from me tonight.
All right, then. Thank you. We'll see you next month, okay?
Okay,
all right,
see you, Vernon. Have a great night.
All right.